We got Mina, we got Sarah, we got Izzy, we got Bob Ryan. I wouldn't trade this panel for anybody on this Wheelin' Dealin' Wednesday. Today, done deal. Finally, done deal. Close, almost. It's just switching sides. Be part of the deal. Danica might have to roast herself tonight. And that's how you get it done,
Thomas
Tiffany
down the
Hayes.
lane, ball,
At the buzzer. Or the horn, rather.
Oh,
okay. Go around said horn. Y'all ready?
Danica. And.
I think she'll do well tonight. I really do.
It's Around the Horn, the show of competitive banter.
Get this going. From dark horse to the driver's seat to getting it done, the Raptors swoop in and get Kawhi along with Danny Green, while the Spurs receive DeMar DeRozan, Jakob Poeltl, and a top 20 protected 2019 first rounder that after a year becomes 2-2s. So GM Masai Ujiri is gambling that he can sell Leonard on staying in Toronto rather than running to LA a la Paul George and OKC. But Izzy, you're upgrading from a star player to a superstar player when healthy. Now, that's a big if. This is a risk the Raptors have to take, right, Izzy?
Oh, I'm with you. I totally think they should have taken this. And it doesn't even matter if he doesn't play there beyond this year. What your other option would be essentially take the same group of players and try again without LeBron, which I admit has its appeal. But when you can upgrade again from DeRozan to Kawhi for 1 year, all of a sudden put yourselves at the top of the heap in the Eastern Conference again and maybe can get out of it because you won't have to face LeBron in that situation. If Kawhi leaves, as everybody says he's going to, after 1 year, yeah, you don't get lucky and have the Paul George situation, but you only have another year, basically, where you can go into a full rebuild and go from there. At least you're swinging big with 1 year, and if Kawhi decides to play there.
Sarah?
I completely disagree because I don't think he's going to stick around. Yeah, there's always a possibility with the way Paul George things ended up. But we've already heard sources from Kawhi's camp reportedly telling the Raptors, I don't want to play there. I might sit out. I'm going to figure out some way to not have to go to Toronto. This is a guy with so many question marks who would really help himself out by talking right now and saying something, anything. And instead, the Raptors are picking up a guy who has question marks about his health, question marks about his dedication to whatever team he's on, and question marks about whether he'll stick around. So their plan was a 3-year window with the contracts that they had right now for DeRozan and Lowry and all the other guys. LeBron James is cleared out. You get a new coach. You have a team that had a franchise record in wins last year, and your answer is to pick up a guy who may or may not make you significantly better, depending on all those question marks, and who's probably going to leave, then leaving you with a rebuild when you've got a wide-open East. I don't get it. It's a desperation move for a team that I don't think should be desperate.
Yeah, but Sarah, if they were going to just chalk up their postseason shortcomings to LeBron James, they'd have never fired Dwayne Casey to begin with. So you're down on the deal. I get it. Bob Ryan, I think last week we talked about it. You weren't feeling this risky move, but there's no way Kawhi Leonard actually sits rather than plays for Toronto. Is there, Bob?
Well, with Kawhi Leonard, you never know about anything. You know, he's like Churchill in Russia. You know, he's a riddle wrapped in a mystery inside an enigma. No one knows where he's coming from. Anybody who gets him has to look him in the eye and say, why are we having this conversation? Why aren't you back in San Antonio where you clearly belong by your temperament and your background? So anyway, now, talent-wise, is he an upgrade? Yes, of course. I think it makes sense for them because if assuming they get him and assuming he's healthy, I mean, yeah, all the ifs, once again, back to what I said about the mystery surrounding him, but the fact is he is a great, great player, and the fact is that they are frustrated that they can't get over the hump.
Right.
They won 59 last year. All right, I got rid of the great nemesis. The great Satan is gone, L.A., I understand that. But they now think with this guy in their heads, we're as good as Boston, we're as good as Philly, we're better than Milwaukee, we're better than Indiana. We can get out of this and get to the finals with Kawhi Leonard next year, and we're not even going to worry about 2021.
Mina, was this a risk worth taking for the Raptors?
I think absolutely. Look, he's probably gone after this year, although making it to the finals would go a long way towards convincing him to stay. But even if he does leave, Izzy was right. It's not catastrophic. This team was not going to win anyways in their previous iteration, especially against a rising Boston and a rising Philly in the long term. They had to blow it up. Now they've got a delayed explosion with some upside. They held on to their young guys. They get DeMar DeRozan's $85 million off their books. They hit free agency in 2020 with cap space. I think this is the right play for both present tense and the future for Toronto.
Well, not just that. It's hard to get a superstar player to sign in free agency, let alone get one via trade. A year ago, you could have never imagined that Kawhi Leonard, top 5 MVP candidate Kawhi Leonard, would be traded. And Izzy, they get him without blowing up their young core and giving up a top 20 protected pick for 1 year.
Yeah, and look, I do think that they can do things and surprise people. Look, we have no idea, as Bob said, what Kawhi is actually thinking, what he's going to do, because he doesn't say anything, and nobody directly tied to him has said anything. But if you look at just his past, look at what he was doing against the Warriors before he got hurt. That team was up 20-something.
Yep.
I know you have a bunch of decent to really good pieces in Toronto that if Kawhi can regain that form, I wouldn't be shocked if he beats the Celtics or the Sixers and goes to the finals, and I wouldn't be shocked if anything happens once you get to those finals. So I need to see the team first to be certain, but as it looks right now, yeah, I think they can win the East.
Sarah, they got the Celtics and Sixers in their own division. Is this the best team in the East with a healthy Kawhi Leonard?
I think they can be. We're leaving out the addition of Green as well, who I know Pop struggled with sometimes, but his shooting could be huge for them. My question again, though, is do we know that he's dedicated to playing hard and playing for them? I know there's CBA rules that protect him from actually sitting out, but he could have another injury that keeps him in there for 7 or 8 games and tries to keep him healthy when he wants to go where he wants to go or wants to force a trade right now. I think there's so many questions that it's hard to even answer this without hearing from Kawhi.
Yeah, well, like I said, don't hold your breath for that. All I know is it behooves him to play now. He already passed up the Supermax deal in San Antonio, Bob Ryan. He's got to play this year to get the max contract from wherever next year. Last word to you, Bob Ryan.
Yes, I think that not only could you throw a blanket, but maybe even a handkerchief over Toronto, Boston, Philadelphia now with Kawhi Leonard there. The only, but we don't know how good a coach Nick Nurse is going to be. No one does.
All right, let's look at this from the San Antonio side of it, though. DeRozan, he didn't take the news well based on his IG story, which probably has a lot to do with him reportedly being told by the team that he wouldn't be traded. So, Mina, let's go back to you here. How did the Spurs do here getting an all-star, albeit at the moment an unhappy one, in return for their MVP candidate?
Not great. It feels like only yesterday we were talking about the Lakers and the Spurs demanding the Godfather package for Kawhi. This is more like the Godfather Part 3 package. It's not that great. I understand they didn't have a ton of, come on, it's true, you can't deny it. They didn't have a ton of leverage, right? Because everyone knew Kawhi's leaving, the health is an issue. They didn't want to get rid of him to the West. I get it. But Spurs could have gotten so much more from Boston or Philadelphia, not just, players who could contribute in the present, but in the future.
Could they have,
It feels like just treading water. Apparently not, but that would have been a lot better than I think what they got, which is relevance, but they're not going to compete in the West.
Sarah?
Yeah, I think the timing is surprising because the Spurs were not in a rush, and they probably could have gotten more if they wanted to wait for the trade deadline, if they wanted to wait for something else. But at the same time, this Kawhi situation was weighing down on them, the integrity of their franchise, the way people saw them and their head coach, who up until then had been pretty spotless besides the Aldridge thing. I think they're not going to be as good of a team, but I also think it's nice to get a guy in DeRozan that's got 2 years and to try to figure out where they build from here and at least getting out from under the dark cloud.
Is he how the Spurs make out?
I am not on board with DeMar DeRozan being the Godfather 3. My goodness, the guy's a multiple-time All-Star. He can drop 40 on you any minute. There's a reason the Raptors were good, and he had a large part to do with it. And I think this is all sort of an indictment of DeMar DeRozan, especially because the way he ended the playoffs last year on the bench while Dwayne Casey didn't even play him. Look, I think the reason he's unhappy is because of the loyalty that wasn't shown by Toronto when he was the only star player who's ever shown loyalty to that organization, essentially, and wanted to stay there for good. I don't think he's entirely unhappy that he's back in the States, that he's going to be playing for a coach like Popovich. And, man, look at the Popovich's Spurs last year. They had LaMarcus Aldridge and not much else, and now you add another All-Star there. Give him 2 All-Stars, give him a healthy team, and maybe a little bit younger without Tony Parker out there, obviously, and I think they're still going to be in the 50 to 55 win range and still be an attractive destination for other pieces to put around.
Bob, how do you see what the Spurs made out with here?
I think in that treacherous West, they'll do well to make the playoffs. I'm not that high on DeRozan, whose numbers are very impressive. He's a 20 points per game career scorer, but he leaves Toronto under a cloud that, regardless of the numbers, he is an underachiever in the playoffs. That's the reputation he leaves Toronto with.
Well, I'll just say this. I learned my lesson last year with the Thunder and the Pacers, talking about somebody losing a trade. And look at Oladipo, what he did last year along with Sabonis. So let me put it to you this way. You got the Raptors, who we think will be improved with Kawhi if he plays this year at a high level in the East. And now you got the Spurs in a loaded West. So I'll go West to East here. Mina, who will be the better team next year as presently constituted, the Spurs or the Raptors?
I think Toronto, because context matters and they can actually compete in that conference.
Sarah?
Yeah, if we're going by record, it's the Raptors because they're in the East.
Is he?
I think it's going to be really close, but I think if Kawhi is invested and buying into the season, I think it's going to be the Raptors by a little.
And Bob?
East or West, the Raptors clearly should be better than them in my mind.
All right. I don't think y'all could have done better with these topics. That was fantastic. Great job out here. I told you, wouldn't trade y'all for anybody. No picks, no players, or nothing. 4 superstars we got here. Locked up in a tight one. That's your horn. It's time to take a break. Buy or sell is next. I don't know, man. You do that 10 times out of 10 if you're Toronto.